When Liverpool signed him for £41 million, many fans questioned the transfer. Just another player from Wolves, they said. But what they didn't know was the story behind those quiet, determined eyes. The childhood spent sleeping on gym floors. The nights when his family couldn't afford electricity. The rejection from Porto that almost ended his dreams. Because Diogo Jota's real strength wasn't just his finishing, it was everything he'd survived to get there. Welcome to Oldlight Stories. Before we begin this incredible journey from struggle to stardom, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. September 20th, 2020, Anfield Stadium, Liverpool. As Diogo Jota pulled on the famous red shirt for the first time, 53,000 empty seats stared back at him due to COVID restrictions. But in his mind, he could hear the roar of the cop, feel the weight of expectation, sense the skepticism from fans who wondered if this £41 million signing from Wolves was worth the investment. What they didn't know was that for Diogo, this moment had been 15 years in the making. The story begins in 2005, in a small apartment in Massarelos, Porto, where 8-year-old Diogo José Teixeira da Silva lived with his parents, Maria and Carlos, and his younger sister, Ana. Carlos worked night shifts at a textile factory. Maria cleaned offices during the day and served at a local restaurant 3 nights a week. Together, they barely earned enough to keep the family afloat. But Diogo had a dream. Every day after school, he would run to the small concrete pitch behind their building, where older kids played football with a ball that had been patched so many times it looked more like a patchwork quilt than sporting equipment. That boy, he never stops, Maria would tell her neighbor, Mrs. Santos, as she watched Diogo from their kitchen window. Even when it's raining, even when he should be doing homework, he's out there with that ball. Carlos noticed it too. The way Diogo's eyes lit up whenever he saw football on their small, crackling television. How he would mime the moves with an invisible ball in their tiny living room. The careful way he treated his one pair of football boots, secondhand, 2 sizes too big, bought from a charity shop for 3. Maybe, Carlos told Maria one night, we should find him a proper team. The closest youth academy was FC Porto's satellite program, 45 minutes away by bus. The registration fee was $150, more than the family spent on groceries in a month. But Carlos and Maria made a decision that would change everything. They would find the money. For 2 months, Maria worked an extra shift at the restaurant every weekend. Carlos took on overtime whenever it was available, sometimes working 16-hour days. They ate rice and beans for weeks. But by December 2005, they had the money. At his first training session, Diogo was the smallest kid on the field. His oversized boots flopped with every step. His jersey, borrowed from an older cousin, hung past his knees. The other boys, many from wealthy families with professional gear and private coaching, looked at him with barely concealed amusement. This one won't last a month, whispered Antonio Silva, the father of one of the other players, to his friend as they watched from the sidelines. The head coach, a stern man named Roberto Fernandes, seemed to agree. During scrimmages, he rarely passed the ball to Diogo. During drills, he corrected everyone else's form but ignored Diogo's attempts. It was as if the small boy from Massarelos was invisible. But Diogo had something the other boys didn't: hunger. Not just for success, but literal hunger that drove him to work harder than anyone else on that field. While other kids went home to hot dinners and help with homework, Diogo stayed late, practicing in the fading light with balls left behind by the academy. He memorized every drill, every formation, every technique he saw. At home, he would practice juggling with a tennis ball in the 2-meter space between his bed and the wall. The breakthrough came in March 2006 during an internal scrimmage. Roberto Fernandes was evaluating players for the regional youth tournament. With 2 minutes left and his team down 2-1, he finally put Diogo in the game. Diogo received the ball 30 meters from goal. 3 defenders converged on him. In that moment, all the hours of solo practice, all the visualization in his cramped bedroom, all the hunger and determination crystallized into pure instinct. He went around the first defender with a step-over learned from watching Ronaldinho highlights on a neighbor's computer. He nutmegged the second with a move he'd invented himself. The third defender lunged desperately, but Diogo was already past him, alone with the goalkeeper. Time seemed to slow as he approached the goal. He could see Roberto Fernandes on the sideline, finally paying attention. He could sense the other parents leaning forward. He could feel his teammates holding their breath. Diogo didn't just score. He placed the ball perfectly into the bottom corner with the calm precision of a seasoned professional. The field went silent. Then Roberto Fernandes began to clap, slowly at first, then with growing enthusiasm. By the time Diogo jogged back to midfield, the entire coaching staff was applauding. Where did that come from? Antonio Silva asked his friend, the same man who had predicted Diogo wouldn't last a month. But Roberto Fernandes knew. He'd seen it before, in rare players who possessed something that couldn't be taught. The ability to transform pressure into performance, hunger into skill. After training, Roberto approached Carlos and Maria, who had managed to catch a bus to watch their son play for the first time. "Your boy," he said simply. "He's special. We want to offer him a place in our advanced development program." The advanced program meant more training, better coaching, and eventually a path to FC Porto's main academy. It also meant more expense, equipment, tournament fees, travel costs that would strain the family's already tight budget. That night, Carlos and Maria sat at their small kitchen table, calculator in hand, trying to make the numbers work. "We can't afford it," Maria said quietly. "The costs, they're too much." Carlos looked through the thin wall toward the bedroom where Diogo was sleeping, probably dreaming of goals and glory. "We'll find a way," he said. "We have to." They found a way by sacrificing everything else. Carlos took a second job doing construction on weekends. Maria began babysitting for neighbors in addition to her other work. They moved to an even smaller apartment to save on rent. Some weeks, they ate one meal a day so Diogo could have proper nutrition for training. But Diogo never knew the full extent of their sacrifice. His parents made sure of that. To him, it seemed like everything was normal, like every family made these kinds of commitments for their children's dreams. The truth only emerged years later, when Diogo was already playing for Portugal's youth national teams and journalists began investigating his background. A reporter named Isabel Mendes was writing a feature about rising Portuguese talent when she discovered the real story. "I interviewed the family's old neighbors," Isabel later wrote. "They told me about nights when Carlos would come home from his second job so exhausted he could barely climb the stairs. About Maria mending Diogo's football boots with dental floss because they couldn't afford new ones. About the winter when their electricity was cut off for 3 months because they'd spent the money on tournament registration fees instead." By then, Diogo was 19 and playing for Atletico Madrid's reserve team. The interview changed everything for him. "I never knew," he told Isabel, tears in his eyes. "They never told me how much they were giving up, I thought we were just like every other family." That conversation drove Diogo to a new level of determination. It wasn't enough to just make it as a professional footballer anymore. He had to succeed at the highest level, not just for himself, but for the parents who had bet everything on his dream. The journey to Liverpool wasn't straightforward. After loan spells and setbacks, Diogo found his breakthrough at Wolves, where manager Nuno Espirito Santo saw something special in the quiet Portuguese forward. Diogo had this quality, Nuno later reflected. In training, in matches, he was always calm, but you could see the fire inside, like he was playing for something bigger than just football. When Liverpool came calling in 2020, offering £41 million for his services, some questioned whether he was worth such a substantial fee. The skeptics didn't last long. In his first Champions League start for Liverpool, against Atalanta in November 2020, Diogo scored a perfect hat-trick. As he celebrated his third goal, cameras caught him pointing to the sky, a gesture for his parents, who were watching from their small apartment in Porto, now finally comfortable after years of struggle. After the match, manager Jurgen Klopp was asked about Diogo's performance. "When you understand where he comes from," Klopp said, "when you know what he's overcome, you realize this boy doesn't just play football. He fights for every touch, every goal, every opportunity. That's not something you can teach, that's something you earn." The full story of Diogo's childhood struggle became public when he was interviewed by Portuguese television after becoming a regular starter for Liverpool. When asked about his motivation, Diogo's answer was simple but powerful. My parents gave up everything so I could chase this dream. Every goal I score, every game I play, it's for them. They believed in me when no one else did. They saw something in a small boy with big dreams and broken boots, and they bet their entire lives on it. Today, Diogo Jota is one of Liverpool's key players, a Portuguese international, and a Champions League winner. But he's never forgotten where he came from. He's bought his parents a comfortable home and made sure they'll never have to choose between electricity bills and their children's dreams again. More importantly, he's established a foundation that provides football equipment and training opportunities for underprivileged children in Porto, ensuring that the next generation of talented kids won't have to train with patched balls and oversized boots. Dreams don't discriminate based on bank accounts or zip codes, but they do require sacrifice, determination, and people who believe in you even when the odds seem impossible. Diogo Jota's story isn't just about a footballer who made it to the top. It's about a family that bet everything on love and potential. Behind every success story, there are usually untold sacrifices made by people who never seek recognition for their contributions. Carlos and Maria Teixeira da Silva gave their son the greatest gift parents can offer: unwavering belief in his potential, backed by concrete action. Do you know someone whose success was built on hidden sacrifices by family or mentors? Someone whose achievement represents not just individual talent, but collective determination? Share their story in the comments. Because at Oldlight Stories, we believe that behind every remarkable person, there's usually a remarkable support system that deserves recognition. If this story inspired you, subscribe and share. Help us honor those who sacrifice in silence so others can shine in the spotlight. We'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, every goal scored in the present is built on dreams nurtured in the past.